This is a brief video on how to do the research necessary to answer Exercise 1.1 in Environmental Law Practice, Problems and Exercises for Skills Development, 4th edition by Anderson, Hirsch, Sachs, and Tormey on the Lexis Advance platform. Exercise 1.1 asks you to look at new source performance standards for a client in the lime manufacturing business. Let's start on the Lexis Advance basic search page by selecting the type of material we want to search. Since this is a problem based on a federal statute, let's first choose statutory codes. On the Codes page, we can select USCS, the United States Code Service, Titles 1 through 54, which has the same type of information as the USCA used in the print examples in the books. In the search box at the top of the United States Code Service page, let's type New Source Performance Standards and hit Enter. The first item on our results list is Standards of Performance for New Stationary Sources. That looks like the statute we are looking for, so we click on Section 7411 of Title 42. Whenever you use a code online, check the table of contents to see what nearby sections you may also need to read to understand completely the code section in context. Statutes often have separate sections involving general and specific situations, as well as definitions that should be used in construing language in the statute. Section 7411 starts with the definitions subsection, but there may still be additional sections we need to consult. For example, you may also want to look at Section 7401, Congressional Findings and Declaration of Purpose. And 42 U.S.C. 7479, which was shown in Figure 1.3 of the book, contains definitions that apply to this entire part of the U.S. Code. Because we may need to look at relevant portions of the legislative history of the statute, on Lexis we can use the Go-To menu at the top of the page to jump to the history of this code section. Section 7411 was originally added in 1970 to a 1955 law, and was amended many times since then. Amendment notes help the researcher find out which changes were made when, to assist in the location of relevant legislative history, if we need to look for congressional intent. Lexis has a collection of compiled legislative histories that include some of the major environmental legislation. To find these legislative histories from the Lexis Advance homepage, choose Statutes and Legislation, then Legislative Histories. The authors of Environmental Law Practice in Problem 1.8 had you look up two of the reports from the Clean Air Act amendments of 1970, so let's choose Clean Air Act Amendments of 1970 Legislative History. Typing the word report in the heading segment or field, we can search for those reports that accompany this public law. Our results include 3 reports and also 2 congressional report documents where bills to amend the Clean Air Act are reported out of committee. Now that we have found the relevant statutes and some legislative history information, let's look for relevant federal regulations. Last time we started with content type, but we could just as easily have started with jurisdiction, federal. From the Explore Content Federal tab, we choose CFR, Code of Federal Regulations. Now that we know more about this topic, we know that the actual statutory language is Standards of Performance for New Stationary Sources. Let's look through the CFR table of contents only for that phrase. We see that all of Part 60 of Title 40 of the CFR is Standards of Performance for New Stationary Sources. So it makes sense to click on Part 60 and browse the table of contents to see what regulations we might need to read. The first place to browse is Subpart A, General Provisions. In addition to general applicability and definition sections, there are also sections on modification and also one on reconstruction. Let's look at the modification regulations, section 60.14. We remember that we were told, in addition to reading the actual regulations, we might want to look to some of the regulatory preambles. The preambles appear not in the CFR, but in the Federal Register where this regulation was originally promulgated. Use the Go-To menu to jump to the History section of the regulation. This says that this regulation was originally published at 40 Federal Register 58,419 on December 16, 1975. The link on that citation takes us to a synopsis of the agency action. Lexis has a link on the right to the Federal Register print version. Final rules are published along with agency response to comments received in the rulemaking process. So this Federal Register document will include the agency response to comments. At the beginning of the Federal Register notice is a statement that proposed rules were published at 39 Federal Register, page 36,946. Proposed rules can be important because that's where the agency initially sets out its intentions in drafting the regulations. Final rules include a statement of where the agency published the proposed rules, although it's not always as easy to find as in this final rule. Going back to the 40 CFR Part 60 Table of Contents, we see in addition to regulations that apply generally to new source performance standards, there are regulations that apply to particular industries, including a part which contains standards of performance for lime manufacturing plants in particular, which you should also find and read. So now you should know how to find all the sources you will need to find the answers to exercise 1.1.